Imagine the scene. Millions of people around the world, eyes fixed on TV screens as cameras focus on the body of a deceased pope, lying on an ornate catafalque. It's been 3-4 days since the announcement of his death. And you, who understand a little bit of biology, wonder, how is it possible that he looks so serene, so intact? It's a question few ask out loud, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of discomfort. After all, death isn't usually a dinner table topic. But it's precisely this curiosity that takes us today on a fascinating journey through the intersection of science, religion, and tradition. Because, believe me, keeping a body preserved for days on end, especially under warm lights and exposed to air, is far more complex than it seems. Think about what happens to a piece of fruit when you leave it out of the refrigerator for a few days. Now imagine the challenge of preserving something infinitely more complex. A human body. And not just any body, but that of one of the most important and observed figures on the planet. This is where a fascinating combination of ancient techniques and modern science comes into play. For centuries, the Catholic Church dealt with this dilemma in ways that today would sound at least curious. Did you know that in the past, a specific cardinal called the Camerlengo literally struck the Pope's forehead 3 times with a small silver hammer, calling him by his baptismal name to confirm his death? It sounds like something out of a medieval film, but it was an official procedure. If the Pope didn't respond when called, surprise, he was declared dead. This hammer ritual wasn't mere superstition. It was a ceremonial way of acknowledging that even the most powerful man in the Church was, after all, subject to the same biological laws as any of us. It was a moment of transition, the instant when a spiritual leader became a body that needed to be treated with special dignity. It was the trigger for a complex sequence of events that needed to begin immediately. In modern times, this folkloric silver hammer has given way to more scientific methods. Today, a Vatican physician, currently the respected Dr. Andrea Arcangeli, uses conventional medical techniques to establish death. Electrocardiograms have replaced hammer blows, but the symbolic weight remains intact. The ceremony has evolved, but its meaning remains the same, to officially recognize that the Pope has left this world. But it's precisely from this moment that our most interesting story begins. Because while the cardinals initiate preparations for the conclave that will elect the next pontiff, a silent battle against time and nature begins behind the scenes at the Vatican. Let's be straightforward. Death is not an event. It's a process. At the exact moment the heart stops, the body begins an irreversible transformation. It's like an entire factory suddenly losing power. All systems begin to fail in sequence. Without circulating oxygen, cells begin to panic. And what do panicking cells do? They release enzymes that start digesting their own tissues. Yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. The body begins to consume itself from the inside out. Within hours, the temperature drops, the skin changes color, muscles harden in, the famous rigor mortis. It's as if the body were following a relentless biological clock, programmed to return to nature. And the most fascinating part? This process would happen even if the body were completely isolated, in a sterile environment. It's biology doing its final work. But the real microscopic horror show is yet to come. Those trillions of bacteria that lived peacefully in our intestines? Now they're out of control. Without an immune system to keep them in check, they begin to spread like an invading army, digesting tissues and releasing gases that cause that characteristic odor of decomposition. These substances, appropriately called putrescine and cadaverine, names that sound like they're from a horror movie but are official scientific terms, begin to accumulate. The smell they produce is so distinctive that our brains evolved to recognize it instantly as a sign of biological danger. That's why we react so viscerally to the odor of death. It's against this relentless march of nature that Vatican experts must fight when a pope dies. And they have only a few hours to act before visible changes begin to appear. The mission? Preserve the body with sufficient dignity so that thousands of faithful can pay their last respects, often over several days, of public viewing. Fascinating, isn't it? This challenge of preserving bodies, especially of important leaders, is not exclusive to the Catholic Church. In fact, humans have been trying to delay the decomposition of their dead for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians elevated this to an art form, removing internal organs, using natural resins, and wrapping bodies in special fabrics, all to ensure the pharaoh arrived intact in the afterlife. For the Egyptians, preserving the body wasn't just a matter of respect, it was a spiritual necessity. They believed the soul would need to return to the body occasionally, and finding it deteriorated would be a serious theological problem. Not very different, if you think about it, from the Christian idea of resurrection, which also values the integrity of the physical body. This connection between body and soul, between matter and spirit, permeates practically all cultures. And perhaps it's this universal impulse to deny physical finitude that has led us to develop increasingly sophisticated preservation techniques. It's as if, consciously or not, we were always trying to win a battle against the inevitable, buying time, literally, through science. And that's how we arrived at the Renaissance, a period when a certain Leonardo da Vinci entered the scene. Far beyond painting the Mona Lisa or designing futuristic machines, Leonardo had another, lesser-known obsession: the human body. He secretly dissected cadavers, mapped organs, and, most importantly for our story, developed pioneering preservation techniques. Instead of opening the body completely, as anatomists of his time did, Leonardo theorized that it would be possible to inject substances directly into blood vessels to preserve tissues. He saw the circulatory system as a distribution network, a revolutionary concept that anticipated by centuries what we now know as modern thanatopraxis. Just imagine, while other artists were content observing live models, Leonardo investigated death to better understand life. His anatomical drawings reveal not only incredible scientific precision, but also a deep respect for the human body. A reverence that, curiously, echoes the Vatican's current approach to the treatment of papal bodies. But the truly significant leap in the science of preservation would only come centuries later, in a completely unexpected context: the American Civil War. Amid the horror of one of history's bloodiest conflicts, a practical necessity arose: how to send the bodies of dead soldiers back to their families, often hundreds of miles from the battlefields. It was in this scenario that Thomas Holmes, a physician and chemist who saw in the tragedy an opportunity to perfect preservation techniques, entered the scene. Holmes developed a chemical formula that, when injected into the circulatory system, significantly delayed decomposition. It's estimated that he personally embalmed more than 4,000 soldiers during the war. What Holmes did, unknowingly, was democratize a practice that was previously reserved only for kings, popes, and nobles. He transformed embalming into a standard procedure, accessible to ordinary families. And, more importantly, he established scientific foundations for what we now call thanatopraxis, the modern technique of temporary preservation used in the Vatican and in funeral homes around the world. The great innovation of this approach was replacing blood with a preservative fluid, usually based on formaldehyde. This substance, when circulating through blood vessels, penetrates tissues and prevents the action of enzymes and bacteria responsible for decomposition. It's like freezing time, biologically speaking. But formaldehyde doesn't act alone. Modern thanatopraxis fluids are sophisticated cocktails that also include anticoagulants, dyes that restore the natural coloration of the skin, agents that maintain tissue hydration, and specific bactericides. All of this is pumped through the circulatory system using a machine that simulates heartbeats, ironically fulfilling the dream Leonardo da Vinci had sketched centuries earlier. And it's exactly this technique that the Vatican employs today. Under the supervision of Dr. Andrea Arcangeli, the Vatican's chief physician, a specialized team performs this procedure with extreme discretion and reverence. It is not a permanent embalming, like what was done with Lenin or Mao Zedong, whose bodies have been preserved for decades. The goal is more modest, to ensure that the Pope's body remains in dignified condition during funeral rituals, which can last several days. The process is much less invasive than Egyptian mummification. There's no removal of organs, nor use of exotic materials. It's a relatively quick, discreet, and efficient procedure. The body maintains its natural appearance, allowing the faithful to say goodbye to their spiritual leader with dignity. And all this happens behind the scenes, away from the world's gaze, not out of secrecy, but out of respect. The result is that image you may have seen on TV, the Pope lying in his ceremonial vestments, apparently just sleeping. Modern science allowing a final service to faith, an encounter between technology and tradition that perfectly symbolizes how the Catholic Church has navigated between the ancient and the contemporary throughout the centuries. This balance between innovation and tradition is, incidentally, a trademark of the Vatican. The same institution that preserves millennial rituals also houses modern laboratories and hires cutting-edge specialists. It's a reminder that religion and science don't always need to be in opposite camps. Often, in fact, they complement each other in surprising ways. In the case of preserving papal bodies, this complementarity is evident. Science offers the means, tradition provides the purpose. Chemistry enables physical preservation, but it's religious symbolism that gives meaning to the procedure. After all, why take such care with a body that, according to Christian theology itself, is merely a temporary vessel for the soul? The answer lies in the value of the symbol. The Pope's body is not just a collection of cells and tissues. It's the physical manifestation of a lineage that, for Catholics, dates back to St. Peter. It's the vessel that contained the Church's supreme authority for years or decades. Preserving it with dignity is a way of honoring not just the man, but the role he represented for millions of faithful around the world. And there's also a deeply human aspect to this care. However much of a spiritual leader he may be, the Pope is also a man like any other, subject to the same biological laws, the same physical fate. The science of preservation allows his humanity to be respected until the end, his face maintaining the serenity that may have been his hallmark in life. It's a final gesture of respect to the individual behind the title. But as fascinating as these preservation techniques may be, there's something paradoxical in all this effort. Science can delay natural processes, but it cannot stop them indefinitely. And perhaps it's exactly this awareness of inevitability that makes the ritual even more meaningful. The preservation of the body is temporary, but what really matters is the legacy that remains. Think about Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Holmes, or Dr. Arcangeli himself. Their bodies followed the fate of all living beings, but their contributions to the science of preservation continue to influence our approach to death. Similarly, a pope may leave this physical world, but his encyclicals, decisions, and teachings continue to reverberate in the church and society, long after his body returns to the earth. And when you think about it, that's a powerful metaphor for all of us. Regardless of religious beliefs or positions of power, we will all leave something behind. We may not have our bodies preserved by sophisticated techniques or displayed in St. Peter's Basilica, but our ideas, actions, and impact on the lives of others can survive far beyond our biological time. It's curious how an apparently morbid theme can lead us to such profound reflections on life, legacy, and purpose. The science that preserves the bodies of popes is not just a technical curiosity. It's a reminder of our shared human condition, of the tension between our physical finitude and our desire for transcendence. The next time you see images of a papal funeral, perhaps you'll look with different eyes. Behind that solemn ceremony lies an intricate dance between nature and science, tradition and innovation. There are symbolic hammer blows from past centuries echoing in modern preservation procedures. There's the acceptance of physical death, combined with the celebration of a spiritual legacy. And there is, above all, something profoundly human. Our eternal effort to give meaning to death, to transform it from an absolute end into a meaningful transition. Whether through religion, science, or simple memory, we continue to seek ways to transcend our temporary condition on this planet. Perhaps that's the true miracle of preservation. Not the fact of delaying biological processes for a few days, but the symbolism of connecting past, present, and future through rituals that honor what we were and inspire what we can be. And you, have you thought about your own legacy? What will remain long after your biological time comes to an end? We don't need to be popes or Renaissance geniuses to leave a significant mark on the world. Sometimes it's the more subtle influences, advice given, an example lived, an act of kindness, that reverberate through generations. If this content has sparked your curiosity about the fascinating intersection between science and tradition, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. We'll continue exploring the mysteries of the universe, history, and the human mind, always with this perspective that seeks connections where others see only separation. Because knowledge is just the beginning.